Welcome, everybody. Welcome to TecSocial for May. May the 4th be with you all. Nobody got that at all. Bad. It's my pleasure to welcome Anna Manley. Anna is a Spark winner in our most recent round, and she is founder of Advocate Cognitive Technologies, Inc., ACTI for short, and she's going to tell us about her product for legal software that uses artificial intelligence called HUX. And I'm not going to go into a whole lot of detail. I'll leave that to Anna. But I do hear that a rumor is demoed, so I'd encourage everybody here to put your phone on airplane mode, save bandwidth. So with that, I'll turn it over to Anna.
Okay. All right. You're all so responsive. Can everybody hear me? I'm kind of chained to the microphone, so I'm not allowed to move around too much. Usually I have some kind of thing here and it helps. So Bob was actually wrong. You were wrong on my name, but you were wrong on how I say the acronym. It's ACTI, not ACTI. It sounded too much like Acme. It was kind of like, and we didn't want to be associated with Wile E. Coyote. We wanted a little bit more credibility than that. Okay, so yeah, I'm the founder and CEO of Advocate Cognitive Technologies, Inc. Yes, it is a mouthful, but that's why I go with the short acronym. So my contact info there, at least some of it. So I'm a lawyer in Sydney. I'm also a business owner, and I'm an animal lover. So that's just a little bit about me. But like Bob said, I'm also one of the winners of this year's Spark competition. So we won Spark based on a proposal to develop HUX. And HUX is web-based software that uses artificial intelligence to analyze and interpret file material and legal documents, extract meaning and relationships from that data, and then automatically generate a completed legal document for a lawyer's review. That's kind of it in a nutshell. I generally just describe it as a self-driving car for lawyers because that's like the new hotness and everybody understands what that means. So the biggest challenge with this product from a business perspective was defining the scope of what we actually wanted to do. We determined that automating the law was kind of our gargantuan task, and it was too big and it would have killed us if we had tried to do it. So we determined that making, and also we didn't want to make a robo-lawyer. That's not what we wanted to do because we figured that lawyers wouldn't want to buy something that would be replacing them. So it would generally be a pretty tough sell. So we decided not to go down that route. Really the purpose of HUX and what we decided to do was to free lawyers from data entry drudgery. That was the goal. I'm not going to say that again because I will get tripped up on it. And that's the easier sell because lawyers do a lot of data entry. They hate it. It's not what they're good at. It's not what they like to do. So we figured that we could come up with a more attractive product by going with this route. So we spent a lot of time thinking, and we decided to focus on one area of law. And when we decided to focus on one area of law, we started thinking of HUX as more of an engine, and we started calling it a semantic natural language processing engine that we're using to accelerate legal transactions. So that's kind of how we're thinking. Now, right now, that one area of law is real estate law. And we picked this area for a few reasons, for 3 reasons. First of all, real estate law is an overhead monster. It's actually pretty time consuming. If a lawyer handles all of it themselves, it's a huge time drain. It can be 5 to 6 hours of touch time for every file. And if they outsource that to a paralegal, someone who they've either employed or they've got on a contract basis, that's still money that's going out the door for work that a computer can do. We also chose this, the second reason, we chose this because we figured this would be a really good proof of concept and a really way to spread the message of how these tools can be used to be applied to the law. So most lawyers practice at least a little bit in the area of real estate. Some lawyers focus on real estate, others kind of dabble in it and just do very simple transactions. But most lawyers who are in small to medium firms touch real estate at least a few times a week or a month. So it's kind of widespread. And we figured that this would be a good way to spread the message of how these tools can be applied. The third reason, which is the most selfish reason of all, is that I know this area of law. I practice in it, I like it, and I know a lot about it. So it was actually the easier one for us to tackle first, because we figured that the complicated part would be figuring out how to apply these tools to the law. We might as well make the actual legal area that we're tackling the easiest one to deal with. This also means that I'm going to come up with a useful product for my business. Even if nobody ends up buying this thing, it's going to be useful for me, which means I'm highly motivated to make it work. So now, on a general level, and kind of more importantly, I really wanted to create something that would that would help lawyers serve their actual important function. So a lot of people think of lawyers as people who fill out documents and push paper around, but that's simply not the case. The real role of a lawyer is to advise, to advocate for clients, and this is the type of role that I wanted to return lawyers to by freeing them from document drudgery. So there are 3 basic steps in a real estate transaction. Who's ever bought or sold a house? A lot of people. So this is probably your experience of the transaction, unless it went absolutely pear-shaped on you. So you went in to see your lawyer. It was the client intake. That's number 1. Number 2, the lawyer collected some information from you. They also collected some information from other sources in order to get the information they needed for the transaction. And then for the closing, there were a bunch of documents that were prepared by the lawyer or their office in order to actually satisfy the lawyer on the other side so that they could complete the transaction. So that's basically what happens during these transactions. This is all that most people see, but that's not all that happens. I mean, and I don't know if you guys like lawyer jokes. I'm not going to say one, but I know you're all thinking about the one where all the lawyers are at the bottom of the sea. Yes. Okay. No, we're not. That's not what I'm referencing here. But this is really more of how a lawyer sees a transaction. So in reality, there are several steps. So each of these little document icons represents a document that a lawyer has to complete in order to finish a transaction. Okay, so it's actually quite a few. Now, the information for these documents comes from multiple sources, but they all do need to be filled out in order to complete. And how lawyers do this now is they use something called precedents. And these are documents that are pre-prepared that a lawyer then kind of fills in the blanks on in order to produce a finished document. So here we have a deed. You see the underlying areas are names and locations, dates. This is the type of information that a lawyer would substitute for the information that was relevant to that particular transaction. Some lawyers do this manually. Others do this by existing document automation software. But other documents are more complex and don't necessarily lend themselves to that type of solution. So the information that is used to complete the precedents comes from documents like this. These are documents that come into the lawyer. They're basically property information, an agreement of purchase and sale. These are the documents that a lawyer needs to actually know what they need to know about the transaction in order to complete it. But whether or not the lawyer is dealing directly with this work, like I said, it can be 5 to 6 hours of touch time to complete the whole transaction. So whether they're manually filling it in or if they're using existing document automation software, it still takes a great deal of time that the lawyer has to personally do, either review or filling in the document. Now, existing document automation software, although it can cut down on the touch time for a lawyer or a paralegal on a transaction, the problem is that you still have to go through and manually tag where you want certain information to go on the document. And that's another inefficiency that we were looking to remove. Because this initial setup phase actually prevents lawyers from even taking on document automation technology, even the existing stuff. And I know a few lawyers who use it in their practices, and it actually is pretty slick. But a lot of lawyers won't take it on because they would have to sit down for a few hours to go through and optimize their documents for automation. A lot of lawyers aren't necessarily technologically savvy, and they may not do that. Other lawyers, they just don't have the time, or they don't even think about it because their assistant does that work. So it's not relevant to them. It's not a problem that means anything. And their assistant is very unlikely to convince them that perhaps they should take on document automation software. So the data review and data entry are some of the most time-consuming tasks that a lawyer undertakes. Now, how HUX deals with this is it cuts down on this touch time by completing the precedents for the lawyer. So it does this by looking at the precedents, and it knows what it needs in order to be completed. It takes the information from the input documents and the output documents. So the input documents are those documents that we saw earlier with the property information, the agreement of purchase and sale, and the output documents are these precedents. And the system learns and configures itself from the precedents uploaded. And HUX actually determines the meaning of the information inside the input documents and the meaning of the information inside of the output documents and molds them together to produce a completed precedent. So here's my little example. So we're talking about the seller's name here. So this is the person who's transferring the property over. So HUX can read the name of the individual seller off of the property online information, and it can read that information off of the agreement of purchase and sale and use and extract that data and place it exactly where it needs to be in the warranty deed. HUX can do this because it understands who the seller is. It's not just a word that's been tagged as the seller. HUX understands who the seller is based on the various input documents and puts it into where the seller position is on the document itself, on the output document. So because we're dealing with transactions involving a lot of documents, we're using HUX as an engine in a broader transaction management system. So a user can handle an entire transaction here. They can check the status of a transaction. They can review and upload the documents for the HUX engine to process. And they can review the extracted information, the information that's been taken from the input documents to make sure that it's correct, and they can edit it in there if a mistake has been made. Now, I know that all this looks pretty neat, but really this is just a representation of what goes on under the hood. This is what it actually looks like. And this is a snippet of our data model. So if I've learned one thing, it's that AI is actually quite hard. So machine learning is a set of algorithms that extract patterns from amounts of data that are too large for humans to digest. Machine learning it's in a sense, it's stupid, right? It doesn't make any judgment calls. It doesn't make any decisions based on the data. Now, the natural language processing algorithms that we've been using will tell you what a noun is and what a verb is, but it doesn't tell you what those words actually mean, and it doesn't tell you what the sentence that they're in means. That's more semantic processing. So HUX is an artificial intelligence engine because it combines the natural language processing with semantic processing in addition to other algorithms that we've come up with and created for this particular purpose to actually extract meaning, to figure things out. So in that way, it's artificial intelligence. So it's the combination of those three things. Now, the application of these tools in the legal space is particularly hard because real estate revolves a lot around dates and names and places. And these are the most difficult things in natural language processing because they have the most variables. For example, Mick and Mac, Neil, right? So think along those lines. There's almost an infinite amount of variables with names. Now, hold on. So for example, consider this sentence. We're just going to talk about dates for a second here. So we humans know what the closing date is just by looking at the sentence. We know it automatically. That's the magic of the human brain. We understand things like this. Now, HUX accomplishes understanding of what the closing date is by going through many more steps. First, it identifies the sentence. Okay, so it basically places a box around the sentence and says this is a sentence. So that's step one. You probably already did that just when I first brought it up there. So then it breaks the sentence into its individual components, and this includes individual words and also punctuation. And these individual components are called tokens. Then it identifies which combination of tokens may be relevant. Okay, so here we have a combination of tokens that the system has identified. Kind of looks like it might be a date. So it has one of the few defined words that are month names, and then it's followed by a number and a comma and another number. So this is a recognized date format. So yes, I'm pretty sure that's a date, right? So it's still behind the human thinking, but it's still catching up. And then the tokens are named. Okay, so we identify them. So we have the month tag, the day tag, the year tag. These are all subtags and all partial date names. That's how we've identified them in the system. They combine to make one big date, and we label that with its own tag, with a whole date tag, and it's called the closing date. How do we know it's the closing date? Because we use semantic processing to figure out that earlier in the sentence, the word closing date was the words together, closing date, was referenced, and it was referenced in a certain proximity to a date. Therefore, this date is the closing date. So that's how it figures it out. I know it seems very complicated, but that's what happens when you're trying to teach a computer something that a human understands almost implicitly. So HUX works by matching patterns. Okay, so if text follows a certain expected pattern, like I mentioned with the date structure, HUX will apply a predefined tag or tags based on that pattern. Now, we've also expanded our semantic processing outwards so that we can process elements of a document that are completely independent of sentences. So, for example, headings. There's a lot of headings in legal documents, and they would show up as an independent sentence on their own. So the system would get all wiggy and not really know what to do with it. So we actually had to train HUX to recognize that this is a heading, and that the heading says this, and that somewhere after the heading, there's a date referenced. And that date is relevant to the heading. So for example, if we had closing date as a heading, and then simply May 4th, 2017, it would understand that those two are connected together. And I know that that seems obvious, but it's only obvious to you because you're a human. It wouldn't be obvious to a computer. So the heading issue was actually something we struggled with for quite some time. But it's not just that HUX knows what the closing date is. It's not just that it knows that it's May 4th. It knows what that closing date means. It knows, okay, well, this is a date on which something happens that is relevant to these documents that I have over here. It knows that that information needs to be inserted into documents that reference the closing date. I'm not even going to get into names because names are a whole other crazy thing, and we do not have time for names. But they were another interesting problem because, like I mentioned before, there are a lot of variables. So this is what tagging looks like in the system. Now you can't really see it. I'll explain it to you. But basically, the text on the left is the Word document that's been uploaded, and on the right is where the tagging has actually occurred. So this is where we've run an actual Word document through the system, and it's recognized that there are relevant things in this document that it kind of wants to look at. So here we're focusing on names, and one of the names that's identified here is Alice Munro. You can tell that I'm a literature fan. Okay, so it's identified Alice Munro. What you can't see on that little tag is there's actually a percentage indicated. And what that percentage is that we've come up with an algorithm to identify and communicate the confidence level that the system has that this is a name, which is very helpful because we combine those confidence levels for a purpose later on. I'll talk about that in a second. So we know that it's a name, and we know that we're 90% sure that it's a name. So that's pretty good. Now, as a person, you would be 100% sure that it's a name, but come on, give it a break. It's working on it. 90% is pretty good. So that's what it looks like. And I'm going to do something foolish and risky, but you have to bear with me for a second here. So I'm going to show you how the system handles documents here. Hold on. Nope. All right. So, actually, you know what I might do? I'm going to drag it over. But we won't do it as a separate display. You're just going to see what I'm seeing. All right. So this is the dashboard for the transaction management system. It's very simple right now. We haven't put in a lot of the widgets that we intend to put in, which is like a calendar for showing when closing dates appear, a list of documents that have been uploaded, a list of things that need to be done, all those housekeeping things, because right now we're kind of focusing on teaching the thing how to do stuff. So we're coming along. But what I wanted to show you was how the document sets work. So when a lawyer opens a new transaction, they have to identify as part of that transaction a document set. And what these are the predefined precedents that the documents that the lawyer wants the system to complete for the lawyer. Now I have a few here. I'm going to show you the sale documents. Okay, so I've uploaded some already. And you can see I've got, I don't know, can you guys read that text? All right. Okay. All right. So I have a checklist. I have, you know, a client identification document. I have a letter to the client, a few other things. But these have all been run through the system, and they've all been tagged by the system. So HUX has already read all of these documents, and it's come up with all these tags that are relevant in the document. So, for example, here we have a name, a complete name. And the confidence level is 90%, as is generally the case with typical names. We haven't decided whether or not we want to allow the system to say it's 100% certain of something, because I don't want it to get too cocky on me. But it's 90% right now, so it knows that this person, Robert Cowan, who's an actual lawyer in Halifax, is a name. Okay, so that's just an example of the tags that it goes through. But if we uploaded a document, and I'm going to upload a deed here, and none of these are actual client documents, I should tell you that. They've all been anonymized, so that these are not my clients. These are made up people. And if I upload the document, it appears in the window, and right now it's in its untagged form. So it's just basically a translation of the Word document onto the web page for viewing. If I go into deal with the document, I can tag the document, saying that I'm ready to do it. And it's going to think about it for a second, and I hope it doesn't take too long. And this was the part that I was worried about. So I'm just going to keep talking to distract all of you so that you don't realize there we go. Okay, so this is, all right, so this is the document after it's been tagged. So that was tagged live in the system. It's identified names, all right? It's identified a type of document. Now, we haven't started to teach it about types of documents and what information to ignore. We're going to have to write some kind of algorithm to, you know, if there's a bolded heading and it's not really relevant to a date, ignore it. We haven't started doing that yet. We're not there. But we have names down packed so far. So we've got them there. And that's basically what it does right now. So it's able to tag documents and identify relevant information, for example, names. All right. Okay. I feel as though I've tempted the demo gods. I was told not to do a demo specifically, and I said, haha, screw you, I'll do a demo, it'll be fine. I feel like that went surprisingly well. So I wasn't doing anything risky anyway. So that's what we've been doing for the past 6 months or so, trying to get that down packed. And I mean, it is a very complicated problem. It's a deceptively complicated problem. But I feel like we've made significant headway. And like I said, we're still working on it. We're still figuring it out. So far we have an intelligent engine, and we're, like I said, continuing to train it to deal with real estate transactions. How much does it cost, and how are we going to make money with it? Well, we're planning on doing a transaction-based model where we charge a user per transaction. This is really only functional for real estate because there are a lot of set costs in real estate, and a lawyer can either just kind of absorb that cost into their flat rate for a real estate transaction, or they can charge that as a disbursement to the client if they want to piss off their clients. But it's basically ready-made for a transaction-based pricing model. How much is a really tough question. We're waiting on our alpha testing to be finished before we determine how much we want to charge for this. I really want to get some feedback from some of the lawyers I have lined up before I even think about what we're going to charge. And also I have to get people using it. But like I said, we're getting ready to actually test it. I have a bunch of lawyers lined up who are ready to do that. They all have been asking me for the past 3 months, hey, when are you going to have that thing done? I'd like to use that thing. And my answer is soon, you know, God. But we're signing up more people. After we have that round of testing finished, we're going to regroup. We're going to fix it up. We're going to maybe totally obliterate it and start all over again. I don't know what the result is going to be. But we're going to wait and see, basically. But all the while we're doing this, we're going to be raising funds so that we can continue to develop the HUX engine out into other areas of law. So by thinking of HUX as an engine, and by shifting our focus onto an engine that can be applied to multiple areas of law rather than something that can handle all the law, we've been able to keep HUX really flexible and so that it can actually deal with these other areas of law, like family, wills and estates, civil litigation, which is actually where the big money is. And these are areas where the documents are more complex, and the training time that dealing with real estate transaction is going to give us is going to better prepare us for the more complicated areas of law. So that's where we're headed. So that's it. There's my contact info. I'm gonna leave that. I like it. I was just gonna ask. Yes. Right now it produces a Word document, but the input document can be a PDF. And faxes. And faxes, yeah. So OCR technology is kind of catching up right now. So if you have chicken scratch, like handwritten chicken scratch on an agreement of purchase and sale, it would really struggle with that. But I mean, as far as kind of neatly printed handwritten text, as long as OCR technology can handle it, HUX can handle it. Yeah. Yes. Mm-hmm. That's right. That's right. So that's actually a very good question, and I have dealt with this question before, which is why I like it. So real estate is a flat rate, typically a flat rate model, right? Where if I am handling the sale of your house, I'm going to quote you a fee, and that's basically going to be it. Unless everything goes wrong that can possibly go wrong, you're going to be charged your flat rate fee. When you charge a flat rate fee, you don't have that same consideration of, oh, well, my efficiency is actually, I can't charge my $300 an hour if I'm being more efficient, and that's money lost for me. So it's actually, in transactions like this, where you have a flat rate model, it's much better to be more efficient, right? Because then you get the work done faster, you get to do more files. Now, it can apply to other areas of law because lawyers are charging more often, they're charging flat rate fees. And the industry is actually swinging toward that. A, because clients like it. I know that with a lot of my corporate clients, I try whenever I can to charge flat rate fees because then people can budget for it, right? And even in family law, I mean, the costs of doing a very simple divorce are actually quite fixed, and they lend themselves to that flat rate structure. So lawyers are going more toward that, which means that efficiency is key. That's the answer. Yeah. Anyone else? Yeah. That is proprietary information. Can I answer a question with just that? Like, that's it. But thanks for letting me answer with that by putting that in your question. I appreciate that. Yep.
To what extent have you guys considered information security and sort of your design, testing the application,
Yeah. Well, the answer is that we have considered it throughout. We have not implemented it throughout, not yet. Because I mean, right now we're developing, but we've left it open so that we can actually put it in there. I know you know someone. I know you do. That's good. Anybody else? Yes.
have you tested on the process of how it goes in the world?
So you're talking about the differences between jurisdictions and how people process transactions. Well, we designed it to be as flexible as possible. Now across the country, real estate transactions are basically the same. But because you're not required to upload a particular precedent in order for the thing to work, because it's just really a Word document and we've designed it for flexibility, it can deal with different transactions across jurisdictions. Now, that being said, I have a bunch of lawyers from across the country lined up to kind of look at it and be like, this wouldn't really work for us in Ontario. And that's our biggest market, right? Ontario is the largest market. So we are prepared for that, but we haven't solved that problem yet. But it may not actually be that big of a problem because we're so flexible.